So here we go. I actually can't believe I'm saying this, but this is the final round of this year's Six Nations. It's literally come so quickly, I can't actually believe the tournament's already happened. We've got a Grand Slam potential in Ireland and lots to play for in the final round as always. Super stoked for Super Saturday. We all know the fixtures by now, but let's look at the teams for Super Saturday. So to kick us off is Scotland versus Italy, and the Scotland team does look pretty strong to be fair. You've still got the likes of Van der Merwe, George Turner who I picked last week and Hamish Watson are back. However, they have been forced into some changes with Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg, debatably their two best players. But Blair Kinghorn and Ollie Smith do come in, who are pretty decent players themselves. Looking at that Italy side again then, and to be fair, not too bad. They did rue a lot of chances last week against Wales. If they'd taken them, they'd have for sure won that game. They're just not clinical enough at the moment. So you've got the likes of Canone, who's been absolutely amazing at 8, and Garbisi's back with Tommaso Allen again at 15. So another solid team, but can they do the job against Scotland? The next game is France versus Wales, and this one has the potential to be a cracker. France obviously coming off the back of that huge England win, and to be fair, their team is pretty much the same. Only changes are Antonio and Taufo Fanua, who are back in the side. But just look at their backline. Absolutely star-studded. If you haven't got a few of their backs, you need to get them in your team. And as for Wales, well, to be honest, I do fear for the scoreline. I don't think it will be as harsh as against England. I think that was a huge blip in England's performance. But a pretty solid team again. They've picked Rhys Webb, Alan Jones, so they've gone back to type with older players and also George North and Nick Tompkins coming into the midfield. So another solid team. They have gone back to type, I would say. Who knows if it'll do them any better. Then for the final Grand Slam deciding game of the Six Nations, the Ireland team once again is pretty strong and pretty much the same, if not one of their best sides, apart from obviously the Ringrose injury. Similar to the France team, that back three especially are just absolutely star-studded. At least one has to be in your team for sure, if not a captain. And as for England, well, they have been forced to make a few changes as well. Ollie Chessum and Ollie Lawrence obviously injured, so Dave Ribbons and Manu Tuolangi come in. An exciting first start for Henry Arundel as well, but I just don't see them getting anywhere close to Ireland. Before we get into my team selection, we do have a little bit of a road to 2,000 subscribers. As you can see, we're almost there, I think about 140 or so. If you aren't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. We've been doing this all Six Nations. If you love fantasy, if you love the Six Nations, just drop us a subscribe. So for the final time this year, let's look at my Six Nations fantasy team. Ellis Genge, Dan Sheehan and Fischetti make up my front row. Yes, I have stuck with Ellis Genge. To be honest, if I could play more France, Ireland and Scotland players, I would, but we are capped to 4, so I had to have some players who I probably think are going to be on the losing side, and Ellis Genge falls into that bracket. Dan Sheehan, on the other hand, full confidence that Ireland are going to win and go get that Grand Slam. Sheehan is a little bit of a risk. He did get injured last weekend, but because he's starting, I'm going to presume that he's fully fit. Fischetti has been one of the standouts for Italy and in the prop position for all fantasy. Did have a little bit of a blip last week, but Italy were just not at the races and weren't clinical enough. I'm sure he'll be back against Scotland. Next up in my second rows, I've gone with Flamand and James Ryan. So these two are actually the two highest performing second rows in the game, so I couldn't not pick them really. Flamand, an absolute stormer of a game week last week, 2 tries and that huge win against England, so he deserves a spot in my team. And then James Ryan has just been carrying so well for Ireland and also plays, I believe it's 80 minutes every game. So he hasn't been in my team, I think, for the whole of the Six Nations, but he's definitely deserved the call-up this week. In the back row, I've gone with Faletau, stuck with Jack Dempsey, and brought in Olivon again. So, Taulupe Faletau, we all know his quality. Obviously one of those stalwart Welsh players who have been brought back in recent months. He's just so solid, and if you look at his points tally for the previous games, they are nearly in the 30s and 40s. So if he scores 30 or 40 again against France, then I'm going to be particularly happy. Do I think he's going to do that? Maybe not, but if Wales are to get some ball, then he's going to be at the top of that carrying statistic. But he also makes shed loads of tackles as well, so I'm pretty sure even if they don't have the ball, he's going to make an impact. Jack Dempsey really did perform for me last game week, which is exactly why I've kept him in this week. I do think Scotland are going to beat Italy and will want to, I guess, put a marker down as the best of the rest, especially in the Six Nations. And I think Jack Dempsey, with his carrying and physicality, he can do that. Lastly is Charles Olivon. It was split between Aldry and Olivon, but because of Olivon's, I guess, more dynamism and willing to get over the try line, I have picked Olivon. A huge game week last week, 2 tries again against England, so I think that says it all. At halfbacks, I've stuck with Dupont, 55 points last week, which was just absolutely crazy, and to be honest, look, maybe the best player in the world once again. Tommaso Allen is at 10 for me. I was going to pick him last week. He actually did score a pretty decent amount of points. I think it was around the 40 point mark. So for a 10, that's pretty decent. He's starting at 15, so if Italy want to play their running game against Scotland, then he's going to be key to that at fullback and get shed loads of metres as well. In the centres, I've stuck with Hugh Jones because I believe he's the top try scorer in the Six Nations, and I've gone with Ollie Smith. So Hugh Jones, we all know what he can do. Like I just mentioned, he's top try scorer in the Six Nations, and he's against Italy now, so I really do fear for that Italy backline. Ollie Smith, on the other hand, is down as a centre in fantasy, but is starting at fullback for Scotland. It'll be his first cap, so I'm sure that the Scotland boys will really warm to him and also give him the ball loads. Scotland and Italy both like to play a running rugby game, so I'm sure him and Tommaso Allen at fullback are going to get plenty of the ball and rack up loads of metres. Finally, for my starting 15, I've gone with the absolute big boys in James Lowe, Thomas Ramos and Mac Hansen. So these three, as well as Hugo Keenan, have been absolute star-studded performers, maybe in the whole tournament, but especially the back three. That's both in real life and fantasy. So James Lowe is my captain. I think he's a pretty safe captain option, even though Mac Hansen has scored more points than him in the last 2 game rounds. I think Lowe, he gets a lot more interactions within the game and involvements, whether that be kicking, tackling, turnovers or running. So I think James Lowe as a captain option is pretty safe. I don't want to maybe change it to a Ramos, who I haven't really brought in, or Mac Hansen just yet. I think Lowe is probably more safe. Not drawn away from Mac Hansen's ability. As I said, he's performed absolutely astonishingly in the last 2 game weeks, almost 100 points in both. So a really good player. I just think Lowe is a safer captain option. Not saying that Hansen's not going to get 100 points again, because that's definitely doable, especially against that weak England defence, which is exactly why I brought him in. Finally, Thomas Ramos. I should have had him in probably all of the Six Nations. He's fullback, he kicks for France, and France are obviously very dominant. So that's exactly why he's in. He too has almost scored 100 points a few times in the Six Nations. So for me, I'm super excited for that back three. And then finally, on my bench, I did deliberate a lot for my super sub, but I have gone with Matt Fagerson. So, reason I've picked Matt Fagerson, obviously I've picked Jack Dempsey, who is in Matt Fagerson's position at 8, but they've also got the return in Hamish Watson and Jamie Ritchie, who is captain, obviously, in the back row. Fagerson can obviously cover all of those positions, so if there's an injury, he'll be straight on. But I also think he's one of Scotland's main ball carriers. Dempsey is obviously favoured right now, but Fagerson is quality, and I think Scotland do value him a lot, so I'm pretty sure he'll be brought on. Will carry loads, get in the wide channels as well, hopefully for some tries. Then the other two on the bench, I've gone for Menoncello and the new debutant for Italy, if I'm saying this right, in Ghisi. So just cheap options, to be honest, who have filled my bench. Menoncello has scored over 30 points, I think 3 times in the Six Nations already, so obviously that's going to be halved, but a really decent option. And Ghisi on the wing, I mean, it's Italy's wingers, so they can perform an absolute madness if they want to. So that's my final team for this Six Nations. I'm actually quite sad that it's ended, to be honest. We've actually grown a really good community once again from this Six Nations. Let me know who you guys have picked down in the comments. It'll be really interesting to see where you are in your leagues. Are you first? Are you second? Third? Do you need a massive game week like me? Let me know down in the comments. I'll reply to you. But thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And good luck for the last game week of the Six Nations.